Hello again. Hello again. Here we are back with human resource management, which is important um, in that your employees are going to be your biggest asset. There's no doubt about that. So human resources essentially does a variety of different things, but they hire employees, determine what needs to be hired, what positions need to be hired for, and then fill those positions with qualified people. Retain employees, and then deal with difficult employees. So there are a variety of different things that when you hire employees, you need to go through. You have to job descriptions, you have to advertise, you have to be concerned about discrimination issues and laws, go through the job interview process, testing, there's often testing involved, and then you do the job offer. So retaining employees, you deal with compensation and benefit systems, so how much you're going to pay people, wage and hour requirements, how many hours are required a week and what are you going to pay them, and then performance reviews. And then finally, the final thing that we talk about with human resources, dealing with difficult employees, if people are going to go on probation or if they're going to be fired or whatever. Okay, so hiring people is super important because you want to make sure you have the right people. You want to make sure for your company you have the right people, and you also want to make sure that the people who are there are happy, that your employees are happy. So if you have one bad employee, then they can really cause a lot of trouble. I'm sure that everyone at some point has had experience with one bad employee in the workplace. So anyway, if you have, and with the hiring process, as I said, it's super important that you go through a good system. You have a hiring plan, no nepotism. You have an employee handbook. No matter how small your business is, it's important to have an employee handbook. Just like we talked about the importance of a partnership agreement. If you have a partnership, that it's important that you have an employee handbook as well, so that if there's any conflicts to come up, there's a method, a mechanism to solve those conflicts. So those are super important. Making sure everybody understands the rules from the get-go. Okay, so hiring steps, the job description, we talked about this before. You go through you advertise for the job, then you interview people, you might test them. You might go through some tests depending upon what the job is. Some companies do personality testing. Some people, you're going for an accounting job, they might ask you to do have a, you do some ledger entries or come up with say a balance sheet based on information. They might ask you to write something and then do the job offer. So the best way, advertising a job is important, and it's important that you put the ad in the right place. So the job description, and part of that starts with the job description. So you describe what's looking for, what's required. You want to look at all the different aspects of the job so that you understand what is required for the job and that the person applying for the job needs to understand what the expectation is. And once you get in there, you can follow them. Then you advertise the job. There's all sorts of different places. Once you have that job and the job description, you feel good about it. There are a variety of different places you can put it. Put the ad. There's no doubt that the best place to way to get an employee is through personal referrals of other people who work at the company. But some other options are college placement offices, trade associations, employment agencies, online job postings. Most people go through online job postings now. Posting on discussion boards with if you look for a specific type of skill. So it can be very expensive, but it's worth it to make sure you have the right for advertising. You have the right person. So you want to make sure that whatever ad you put in, which it's the job description will help inform that, that you should have it concise. Make sure it draws some sort of level of attention. You want to be able to sell the job. You want to ask for the resume and list of references. And then you have to have a deadline. So discrimination in the workplace discrimination in hiring is something that's important to remember. There are laws that cover that. Hiring, dismissal, level of pay, promotions based on race, color, gender, religious beliefs, or national origin of the employee you have to be very aware of those, and that actually it's prohibited by federal and state laws. So you want to make sure that job descriptions are written in a non-discriminatory manner. Sorry about that. Written in a non-discriminatory manner. And you want to make sure that you put ads in places where people can see them. All sorts of, it's not limited to just certain demographic areas. So on the job application, these are all the things you should include. And, this is not necessarily absolutely required to have on, but these are on a job application. They're just some of the things you want to think about. You can go through and read those. Then you go through the interview process. The interview process is important. That's when you really, it's just one thing to know someone on a piece of paper. It's another thing to know someone actually meet them face to face, which again, I think that's something particularly in the world that we live in, that there's so much virtual contact with people that when you meet them, it's sort of a whole different thing. The same thing with the job interview. So you want to make sure that the people who best fit the qualifications are the ones that come in for the interview. You should be careful about what kinds of things that you talk about. Discriminatory topics should not be discussed. And the interview questions should be based on the needs of the job. There's also this idea of what we refer to as the realistic job preview, which is sort of like the good, bad, and the ugly of the job. And then be sure that you check as many references as possible. And be sure to try to keep an open mind and not be too biased, because you might find out when you're doing references on someone that maybe it's not what you expected, or you have to really make sure that you're not being easily swayed by with other perceptions. Okay, and then you want to keep records of people who responded, the ads you listed, who responded, and the criteria in case there's ever any kind of dispute brought up. All right, so drug testing is something that in terms of the testing, something that would happen. But so then there's in states where marijuana is legal, it's becoming less common to test for marijuana in most states because of the prevalence. It's hard to sometimes get employees because of that. But drug testing, particularly depending upon what industry you're in, if you're in a drug testing, there could be a lot of companies have zero tolerance, particularly manufacturing companies. So also it could be you have a math test, or it could be, so I was talking earlier, personality tests, behavioral testing, writing tests, that kind of thing. So once we get through that, then we're going to have someone with an offer, and you want to make sure it's in writing and that kind of thing. You might, depending upon the situation, they might want to be able to negotiate. You might want to be able to negotiate the deal with them. And then when people are there, then you've put through all this time and effort into hiring someone, so you want to make sure you can keep them. And one of the big things is this compensation and benefits. So how much are people going to get paid, and what are their benefits going to be? And then also, so they understand from the beginning, how are they going to be reviewed? So with compensation and benefits, there's all sorts of different kinds of benefits you can give people. When you let people know about the compensation and benefits is up to you. In terms of, are you going to let them know in the job interview or not until the offer, or that kind of thing. So it's important that everybody be treated equally and fairly, which is important, and market rates and all that kind of thing. All right. Then we talk about evaluating comparable employees in terms of how they perform relative to their objectives, what's their future employment opportunity, that kind of thing. What are the objectives for next year, and then the pay raise. And that's when we get into the pay raise and the performance review are really very involved. So you can pay people through an hourly wage. The people might get a raise at their performance, so they might get a change from hourly to salary. So hourly salary commission based on sales. It could be commission and it paid in addition to a basic salary. And then there's also profit sharing, which is you would be able to enjoy some of the profits of the company, or a bonus if they've reached a goal, if an employee reaches a goal. So there is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is important. It's the minimum wage and it requires overtime pay. Child labor laws have to be followed. Okay, then that's pay. So let's talk about benefits now. Paid vacations and holidays, 401k plan, which is a retirement plan, medical care, a retirement plan in terms of 401k is something that you would invest in through the stock market, or a retirement plan like a pension plan. What kind of sick leave you might give people, life insurance, that kind of thing. Some companies offer life insurance, some companies don't. Okay, and then there's benefits. Different types of benefits have different types of benefits have different types of financial costs and impact on the organization. So a larger corporation can usually handle the impact of benefits much more than a smaller corporation can. And health insurance really it can be a competitive advantage for you if you can offer health insurance. It can be a competitive advantage over other small businesses. Also, the idea of the 401k and the retirement plans also can be a benefit, particularly if you can contribute to that. All right, so now we are into the performance review, which essentially the idea is that workers are motivated not just by money, but also by some kind of personal satisfaction. And it's important that that people know what they're doing, and you set goals and you can review those goals. Okay, so you can hire an employee or an entrepreneur can hire and fire people at their will, generally speaking. You need to have some sort of well-documented reasons for it, though. And there should be some level of, an opportunity for improvement. That goes into if there's a problem during the performance review, if there's a problem, that's the time to bring it up, and then the employee can work on it. And it should be also that there's as much transparency as possible. Okay. Then there are a variety of different laws that all employees, in terms of HR, all employers have to have. Workman's comp, someone gets injured on the job. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, that there's providing a safe workplace. Unemployment compensation, unemployment insurance, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So workman's comp law is designed so that employees who are disabled or injured are provided some type of compensation, injured on the job. And it's workman's comp is very important. It's regulated by the state. Costs differ from state to state. And if someone's covered on workman's comp, then they can't sue after getting that. They can't sue the company. OSHA, health of workers. So, again, safety issues, that kind of thing. Unemployment compensation, if you have to lay people off, again, they'll have some sort of safety net. ADA, if you have more than 15 employees, you have to make some sort of adjustment or accommodation for people who suffer from some sort of disability, and the list of disabilities is very broad. It's an opportunity for inclusivity. And then there are some issues with family businesses, which can be tricky. Hiring practices, people usually hired informally. They don't go through the regular process that everybody else does, which is kind of a problem. Managing family members can be difficult because, you can't fire the brother-in-law, for example. And then the biggest issue also is succession. Who's going to take over the next business? Family businesses are really tough. Most of them do not survive after more than 2 generations. But there's also a lot of tremendously successful family businesses, but management is super important in that regard. Okay, so go through a chapter review. We talked about elements of human resources. We talked about hiring, retaining employees. We talked about probation and firing. We talked about different types of compensation. We talked about performance review, different types of broad coverages that are required by law. And then we also looked at family businesses. Okay, that's it. And if none of you guys have any questions, please be in touch. Thanks.